one mic.
And
Do both work?
no, you guys fix that.
Okay.
All right, are we ready to go?
Yeah.
All right, hello everyone. We're starting research early. Like I said, we have some classes to go to, so we're gonna present this to you real quick and get her done. Web security, OWASP, Juice Shop, and Burp Suite. A little bit on the pen testing theme. I know Spencer was talking a little bit about web exploitation earlier, so we can get a little more into that. Also, intro. There we go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Draden. I'm a freshman. I do a lot of CTFs, also jiu-jitsu, and sometimes I like to jump out of planes.
Wait. There we go. Okay, now let me get that figured out. Okay, this is me, Brad, third year BSMS student, CSEC. Done about 6 years of web development. I'm also a red teamer, black teamer, and I'm also the director of PR for RETSec. So we're going to start with OWASP, and Draden's going to cover this.
Let me put this in here for a second. All right, so what is OWASP? OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. It is a nonprofit whose mission is to improve software security. And they have a top 10 list of classifications of vulnerabilities in web app stuff. So we're going to be going over those. All right, so number 1, broken access control. This is acting outside of intended permissions. It typically leads to unauthorized information disclosure. So some examples of that are bypassing access control checks by modifying the URL, which is also called an IDOR or indirect object reference. Vulnerability, metadata manipulation, so if you manipulate a JSON web token or a cookie, or an API with bad controls on post, put, and delete, so you can alter data on the server side. I did a topic presentation last semester about an IDOR that led to a nice web vulnerability. Cryptographic failures include using plain text protocols, so no HTTP, that is bad. Using default keys or having bad key rotation is another no-no. The proper procedure is determined by types of data. So are you going to be handling or storing passwords? Do you have PII? Are you do you need to be PCI DSS compliant? Or is any of your data governed by GDPR? That's going to determine what kind of mitigations you have. And this was previously known as sensitive data exposure before they changed this in 2021. Injection, this is a big one for pen testing. So this is what happens when untrusted data is sent to an interpreter as part of a command or query, and it can execute commands, and you can access data without proper authorization. Cross-site scripting was previously its own category, so that's why it says new at the bottom. So you have different things like SQL injection, NoSQL injection, or OS command injection. Your mitigations include filtering or sanitizing user input. If you have SQL queries going on, you can use prepared statements. So that way the user input is only treated as data, not a command. Also, insecure design. This is not the source of all vulnerabilities, but there's a difference between insecure design and implementation. If you have an insecure design, you can implement it perfectly and it will still be insecure. So this is where you want to have DevSecOps and a secure development lifecycle. Security misconfigurations include bad or default settings, accounts, etc., as well as bad error handling to where client-side errors will reveal information about the system, including like what versions you're running, which lead to further potential attack vectors. One common thing I've seen is you have like a directory where if you access like a / directory, you get a 403, but you can access directory / passwords.txt. That is not good for you, unless you're the pen tester. Vulnerable and outdated components, you need to know what versions of software you're running if you're on the defensive side, including any nested dependencies. So if you know Log4j came out, maybe don't use the vulnerable version. You want to test compatibility with any changes in libraries and scan for vulnerabilities regularly with some sort of automated scanning tool. Identification, authentication failures. This was previously called broken authentication. It includes allowing any kind of automated attacks, such as brute forcing or credential stuffing, having allowing weak password policies, missing or ineffective multi-factor authentication, or exposing like a session ID in a URL that allows you to log in or authenticate as another user. Software and data integrity failures, this happens with like insecure CI/CD pipeline, software supply chain. If you've heard of SolarWinds, you should have digital signatures that verify whatever components you're updating or using are actually from the right source. Number 9, security logging and monitoring failures. You want access logs, error logs, all the logs. You also want log integrity, and you should actually alert or monitor them. And then hope your logger doesn't have RC as well. Number 10, server-side request forgery. So this happens when a web application fetches a remote resource without validating a user-supplied URL. So you can send a request to an unexpected destination, and then you can get information about internal systems, like say there's an internal web server that you wouldn't be able to access from the outside, but you can get the application to just like say, hey, I want localhost on this port, and then you are able to get the results from that. Then that's more information on other potential attack vectors, so you should send and validate all client-supplied input data and maybe disable HTTP redirections. Brad's going to talk a little bit about Juice Shop.
All right, so now that we know a little bit about what we're looking for, we're going to take a look at this thing called Juice Shop and what it is, how we set it up. So, Juice Shop, okay. I was going to put the logo in here because it's funny because it looks like the JavaScript logo, but fun fact, it was actually not named for the acronym to be the JavaScript logo. Some German word that I cannot remember. But it's basically a vulnerable web app. It's written in AngularJS, and then it has a backend written in Node.js and Express, I believe. And essentially it has a bunch of vulnerabilities that fall into all of these categories that we just talked about in the OWASP top 10. And essentially it's a fully standalone CTF-style web exploitation learning tool for you guys to get practicing all these different web exploits. Get used to doing that web pen testing, especially that Spencer was talking about. This is an extremely useful skill for when you experience a lot of these custom web apps within internal companies. And this little graph covers the breakdown of all the different categories and how distributed they are. You can see that there's just a lot of them. So quickly, how to install Juice Shop. My recommended method is Docker. It took me 5 seconds to pull this and stand it up. You can also just download the source, run it using Node.js. Works the same way. It's just you're not running it in the Docker container, you're running it on your host. There's also a try hack me room for this, for Juice Shop. You can do that if your computer has problems like running a lot of things at once, especially if you're running like a Kali VM at the same time. Resources get thin sometimes. So try hack me is definitely a valid method as well. So how do we pen test this web app? One of the main tools that we're going to talk about is Burp Suite. This is a web exploitation program with a very large toolset contained within it. This is probably something that you've seen when you're Googling tutorials on how to use Kali, and it walks you through a bunch of confusing steps to click a bunch of buttons, type a bunch of things in, and boom, wow, you did the challenge, right? Well, we're going to demystify a little bit of that. You can see how many tools here. The ones with the asterisks are actually require the paid version. But we have target, proxy, scanner, intruder, repeater, sequencer, decoder, comparer, extender, click bandit, collaborator, mobile assistant, logger, and DOM invader. So a lot of tools. And this can be used to execute a large portion of your pen test process. Obviously, you're going to want to go beyond and kind of poke around yourself to verify a lot of these things, but the nice part about Burp is it allows a lot of user input into the whole process. So we're going to go over some of those common tools. We're not going to hit every single one of them because it's impossible. There's a lot of content, and if you really want to go deeper, there's great documentation for it. So the basic proxy here in Burp Suite is basically just going to intercept all of your web traffic, and you're going to be able to view all the requests that are incoming and outgoing. through your browser. The nice thing about new Burp Suite, didn't always used to be this way. Used to have to go into your browser settings and set up proxy settings. Now Burp Suite comes with embedded Chromium, so yay for that. All you have to do is hit open browser and it just boots up.
Yeah, one note about the embedded browser is if you have some sort of error opening it, if you go to the project options and then miscellaneous and you click this setting on the left to allow it to run without a sandbox, that'll probably fix it.
Yep, that's a good tip. Okay, so with the proxy, like I said, we can intercept all these requests. So when you have this button toggled on, you see that it says intercept is on. It'll say intercept is off when we're not intercepting anything, but when it's toggled on, every single request that comes in and out of your browser is going to come to this screen. And it's going to freeze your browser. Your browser is going to be constantly loading because it's not receiving anything, because Burp has intercepted it. And it's just waiting for Burp to either forward or drop it. That's your action in the top left. If you drop it, it never hits your browser. If you forward it, it hits your browser. But before we go ahead and forward it, we can actually edit the request while it's in transit. So we're kind of grabbing it out of thin air and then doing a little magic on it, and then we'll send it back out just to make sure that it has exactly what we want. Also, feel free to go to that URL. Hello. Okay. All right. We got there. Some cool tips with the proxy. When you right-click on that main screen with a packet, we have a lot of different options. So we can send it to basically every other tool in Burp. We can automatically copy it without having to copy paste, do whatever. And then we can also quickly copy a bunch of information about the request or response. We can also filter what we want. So if we're looking for specific requests, let's say we're looking for a post request to our login.php. Well, we can put that in our filter so that way it'll only capture those post requests. So you don't have to hit forward like a million times while you're waiting. This is a really good tip, especially if websites have like tracking, like Google Tag Manager and this kind of stuff. It's really annoying to sit there and click a bunch of buttons, trying to forward all these packets. But if you're trying to do it quick, don't worry about it. You can also do the same thing for the responses as well.
I can do this. Yeah, so what Brad mentioned, a lot of times on websites they'll load resources that aren't part of their domain. So you can edit the scope with include and excludes, which is very helpful, so that way you won't have to deal with, hey, I don't want to look at the request going to Google Font API, because that doesn't help me. So you can exclude that, or you can only include things at a certain domain, and if you take the time to set this up, it'll make your life easier. Also, if you're a pen tester, make sure that if there's something that's out of scope, you put it in your exclude, or you just make sure you take note of that, and it'll keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, that's a good note. Spencer made very clear that was a big no-no when you're doing pen testing. So make sure to set your scope, okay? Don't get fired, please. Oh, and then here we have Intruder, which I took it directly from the creators because they said it best. It's an easy way to automate custom attacks. That's the most generic description ever, I know, but that's because this is the most generic tool ever. You can do whatever you want with it. The idea is that you're able to add what are called payloads to your request, and that you can think of those as just variables. And then what we're able to do, I think on the next slide, yep, here we go. We can generate lists for our payloads. So we can just generate a simple list, which I have an example of here on the right. It's essentially a word list that it's going to iterate through and replace the variables with. And you can do these for each of your payloads individually. And also you can see we have custom iterator, a bunch of different ones, recursive, illegal unicodes, brute forcer. There's a ton of things. You can also import word lists from files, so if you want to do things like RockU, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Some things to note about Intruder, if you're on the Community Edition, you have access to it, but you will be severely rate limited.
Yes.
So that's one thing to know. And then there's also different kinds of essentially options you can set, so you can have different fields where these payloads are inserted to, and there's different kinds of attacks you can do that will insert them into different areas. So you can have one list for each of them, or you can have one list that is like essentially loops in a loop and gets everything in the list in both places. We don't see it every combination.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the basic one that you're going to use most of the time is called sniper. That's just going to start iterating through your word list and start popping them right in the payloads. That's the one that I usually use. Here we have repeater. So I took it from that fancy right-click menu that I saw earlier, and I clicked send to repeater. And so if we're looking to like forward a bunch of these packets, and it's annoying. Like if I'm trying to spoof a login form, it's annoying to have to go back to the login form every single time and enter details. Well, what I can do is just send to repeater, and this does exactly what the name says. It just is able to repeat the same request a bunch of times. So I can sit here and I can mess with the request. Burp Suite actually parses out all the parameters and the request and the response nicely for us here on the side, nicely formats all that. And we can export to like JSON and all this good stuff. But this makes it easy to repeat requests, especially if you're trying to sit there and dev and exploit, and you're just trying to mess with things. You can sit here for 15 minutes, mess around with a bunch of different parameters, and then potentially move on or potentially find something. You want to talk about sequencer?
So sequencer is a tool that if you're just doing CTFs, you probably won't run into a lot, but it does very cool statistics magic. It finds a use for math. It measures the entropy of tokens, which is very important because if you go back to OWASP, if you have insecure cryptographic mobbers, you can predict future token values if it's not secure. So if it's not random enough, then you can just be like, oh, well, this next token value will be this, and then you can use it and have things.
Yeah, usually that's using what we call session hijacking. So if I'm able to predict what Draden is about to log, the session token that Draden is about to receive, then I can just get it before him, and then when he receives it, I'm able to log in as him automatically.
I wrote the next few. So there's also the decoder, which is basically CyberChef, but just for your web needs, and it's built in. It's pretty nice.
It's built into a few of the different tools as well.
Yeah, so you can just send data over there, and then you can hash it. You can encode and decode from like even like gzip and hex and pretty much anything you'll encounter. And then there's also the compare, so you can compare different responses by the bytes, and then it'll do automatic highlighting. So if you look up here, you'll see Chandy going to Chandy Greece, and they look the same, but oh no, there's another 20 hexes, ASCII for space, and there's his hidden space that you wouldn't have seen. It's obviously not important that here, but if you look at specific requests that look very similar, you can find differences that might be important. There's also Logger, which logs network activity in memory. This is helpful for getting unexpected results from Burp, and you can make sure background scans or attacks are still running. And then you can also, I'll just go back a second, you can also change how much memory it uses to log so you can store more.
Good note.
There's also the extender, so if you like mods, you can easily install these extensions. And some of them require Burp Suite Pro. You can also write your own extensions. Burp is made in Java, so you can write them in Java, or you can write them in Python with the Jython library, or in Ruby with Jeruby.
Yeah. So you can be cringe.
Yeah.
Also, go learn more things. I did a presentation last semester on entirety of kind of the basics of web exploitation and web security. QR code, fancy QR codes. I know we like those nowadays. Everyone likes to scan the QR code. So there's the direct link. And you can also go search for it on our RETSec YouTube page.
I also want to give out some random tips if you're using Burp Suite. With the intruder, some of the helpful things for payloads that you might be thinking about, you could just use like a simple SQL payload, like cheat sheet essentially, and then you can just inject it into different areas of a login form, or you can use it with a username and password list, and you're just going to get a bunch of results that are essentially just like length and like the HTTP response code. So an important thing to do is just look for things that are different when you're doing something like that. So if you see, hey, all these bad login attempts are this length in the response, start looking for things that are of a different size, and that'll indicate something else, or look at the HTTP response code. That's like one of the most helpful things I've had.
Here's some more resources. The Web Security Academy. That's spelled wrong. That's all There's a web security catch. These are the people who make Burp. Give them some love. Also, try Hack Me, Junior Pen Tester Path, Ultimate, like God tier. Juice Shop Room, like I mentioned earlier. If you don't have the resources, just go spin it up, VPN in. It's super easy. And now, for the scariest thing a presenter can say. Now for a demo. Everyone give a quick prayer to the demo gods. Everyone knock on wood. Thanks. Give us a moment to get set up. I'm going to mute the mic so I don't accidentally blast your ears out. I need to stop share. Okay. Okie dokie. I think we're all set up to go. Alright. I gotta put the notes right there. So, okay. Alright. Can everyone hear me? Is this proper enough? Okay. So, the demo is just going to be walking you guys through some of the very first steps that you're going to do on the Juice Shop. Specifically, I went through the Juice Shop room on Try Hack Me. I figured that would be the best beginner intro here. So the first task that it asks us to do is it asks us to find the admin email for the entire domain. And so one of the first things, especially that Spencer talked about earlier today in his pen testing presentation, if you're watching this as a recording, go back and check it out, was OSINT. We need to start browsing, find some information, collect some info. So we can go through here and we can start clicking all these different tools and we can get some different juices. And it looks like a bunch of these have reviews. If we open up these reviews, it looks like we have an email, juice-sh.op, Juice Shop. And Bender, that's interesting. We can take note of that. But if we start clicking on a few of these, this one doesn't have any reviews. Not 1,000,000% sure what this currency even is. But what do you know? We have an admin email right here. It was that easy. So just admin at Juice Shop. So our first task is complete. We found the admin email. And now our next task is to try and log in as the admin. And that might seem like a big jump, but we got to remember what we went over. We need to start intercepting traffic, throwing it into Burp so we can start analyzing exactly what happens. So if we go to this account, we have a login page. We have a login form. Whoops, I just flicked that. If we just go ahead and enter in that email, and let's just say we'll enter in password 123, best password ever. We can see invalid email, right? So we know that's the request we want to try and intercept. So we're going to go ahead and Burp, and I'm pretty sure this is the Burp browser. If it isn't, I'm going to...
You're not in the Burp browser.
Yeah, I don't think I am. Let me just copy this URL real quick. This is how live demos work. All right, and I forgot to follow my own instructions. Go to the proxy tab. Go ahead and click that open browser. I'm not going to mess with proxy settings during a live demo. Okay, actually, it's going to take a minute. My laptop has a lot of things running on it right now. Oh, God. Security, it's annoying. Why do we even do this? Okay, yep, remember what I said. Turn it off until you really care about it, because it's annoying to click forward a bunch of times. And Burp does slow down the browser process a little bit, because remember it's doing all that logging in the background. So we're getting a bunch of information here. All right, let's go ahead and enter in our details. Okay, and let's get ready to intercept. Our intercept is on, and we're going to go ahead and intercept some web traffic. We're going to click login. All right. So, real quick, we see a GET request. We know that when we click on a form, that's typically a POST request. If you want to learn more about that, go watch the web presentation. I explain a lot more of that. But a GET request is not really what we're looking for. We're going to go ahead and forward that. Oh, and what do you know? The next request, we have a user login, and it looks like here at the bottom we have some form data in the form of JSON. So, we can go ahead and mess with that. As you can see here, we have a great password. Quatwam is goated. So, Quatwam. And let's go ahead and we can enter in, something that we know, just to see how this works. We go ahead and hit forward, and as you can see, it works the same exact way. So I'm going to real quick intercept off, so I can clear all those WebSocket things.
If you go to history, you can just send it to repeating.
Yeah, there we go. Draden is already, it's way down. That's a socket.
There you go.
Wow, you can see how many things are happening in the background. So remember that thing that we were talking about when we want to repeat a bunch of things, do a bunch of requests and start messing with it. So one of the most basic web exploitation techniques that we can do is something called SQL injection. So there's a really well-known SQL injection out there that I talked about last semester in our web presentation, where we talk about where we just start putting form data into SQL strings, or SQL syntax. So we can go ahead and we're just going to end the string. We're going to say or 1 equals 1, and then comment out the rest of the line. This password should not matter. And then if we go ahead and send that, what do you know? Looks like we get an authentication token with the admin user. So now we know that we can go ahead and use our proxy again. Alright. Oh my gosh. WebSockets are so annoying. Here we go. We're going to go ahead and put that, put our little SQL injection in there, hit forward, and look at that. We are logged in. That's the wrong button.
I'll go on the left.
Sorry, it's half screen. If I click on this,
Forward it.
Draden, I don't know what I'd do without you, man. There we go. Admin at Juice Shop. We have logged in as the admin user. Was I going to do anything else? I think that's it. So basically, we've done a basic SQL injection by intercepting traffic on Burp. We can start messing with packets. As you can see, Burp does a lot with WebSockets as well. That's for real-time communication. It's a little bit annoying. You can turn it off. But from there, you can go on. Also, Draden wanted me to let you know that it's actually in the terms of service of Burp Suite that when you run it, if you want to run it and earn money off of it, you have to run it in tac bingus mode. Otherwise, it is completely illegal. So thank you, Draden, for catching that in the terms of service.
Yeah. I read the fine print so you don't have to.
He reads the fine print so you don't have to. All right, cool.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Because that demo went way too easy. There has to be something wrong. No? Okay.
All right. I look forward to all of your research presentations.
You have a question?
Are you missing class right now?
Yeah.
Maybe. Who cares? No, don't miss class. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could...
Let me show it real quick.
Okay.
Oh, I need to grab a... Oh wait, I think I have. There we go. Look at that. If you use a fancy right-click menu. So, as you can see, it automatically detected the email fields. Burp Suite is really fancy like that. It automatically detected the email field and the password field. We can go to our payloads. It's already set the simple list. This is where we can go in and enter a bunch of things. Maybe we can try just something like that. Yeah, like a bunch of these different things. I guarantee you I don't have this set up properly, so when I click this, it's not going to work.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
I can talk about that a little bit.
Actually, never mind. It just did work. It's just about to spam everything, so that's cool.
I can mention what happened. Let the mic-
Draden's about to mention what I did wrong.
All right, so if you go back to the positions, so all those like highlighted fields are called positions, and Burp does a good job of detecting them automatically, but you'll see it also detected stuff like the language,
Oh, yeah.
which we don't want to brute force with SQL queries or payloads. So you can, there's a button on the right where you can clear all of them, and then after that clears them, you could like highlight what you actually want to add as a position, and then click the add button. And then in the payloads, you don't have to type them all one at a time. You could just load it from like a simple text file, and then that's how you would do a SQL tag normally. But this one is more of a standard payload.
There you go.
That's a good way to do that. And then this will work, and yep. And you'll see what I meant about the status code there, and then also the length, so you can see that's a good way to start thinking about what might have worked when you have. It works. It looks better with trying to brute force, say like a username or password, and then you have like 500 requests to look through, and then they all look the same.
Yeah, but all of your results will get summarized here. You can export all this to a file, and that's usually what you'll do, and then you'll go through after, in a separate time, you'll go back through and you'll start looking at things. You'll just start running this in the background and then go work on something else, similar to like the Nmap scan, this kind of stuff. That's something you just start running in the background because it's going to take a while, especially with the demo version of Burp rate limiting you. So you're just going to have to wait on that, and then you can save it, export it, and then actually start going and viewing these things.
Are there any other questions? No. All right. Thank you.
Awesome.
Have a good day.
Thank you guys so much. Bro, this stream computer is about to explode.